I had a guy, honestly, the other day at work. We had an argument. It was getting very combative because it's sales, and sales sucks, to be honest with you. But it's about all I can do right now. And we had an argument, and the guy actually spouted out, and he said, "Get the fuck out of my office. You killed people."
You're listening to Bought with Nelly.
Alec, thanks so much for joining the podcast. I'm really interested in learning a lot today about the opioid crisis, what role you had to play in it, your life, how you got into sales. So how do you introduce yourself when people ask you?
I mean, I introduced myself as a person who is kind of a sales maniac, for the greater portion of my life, just super competitive. Grew up in a relatively normal home. I mean, my brother was a little volatile. He was very bipolar and died a tragic death at the age of 41. But still, I had parents and they were home and raised me well. And I went to college, went to grad school, and got a master's in social work, was a guidance counselor and a coach for a while. And the money, became an issue, meaning I needed more, or at least I wanted more and I thought I needed more, and jumped into the world of pharmaceutical sales and just became extremely competitive. I was competitive as, growing up as an athlete and so forth, not a great athlete, but a high school ball player, and just always enjoyed winning. And then getting into pharmaceuticals and, being ranked amongst your peers, it kind of rejuvenated that competitive spirit, and to the point where, over time, it certainly went too far.
How does the competitive spirit work? Because you said you were a gym teacher.
I started off as a part-time phys ed teacher. That was my first job, 3 classes a day while I was working on my master's. And then when I got my master's, I became a guidance counselor and social worker. Yeah.
Because if you're an athlete, a career as a teacher and especially in sports is usually kind of, let's say, looked down upon in most North American society. So did that play a bit on your ego as you,
Oh
kind of
yeah.
went? Yeah.
Oh yeah. My ego was killing me. But ego is a huge detriment in general. Having an ego, I think it was probably, you know, a huge component to my downfall. But yeah, I worked at a high profile private school. Kids were super affluent, and the parents had a ton of money and the cars and the dress that they wore, and the comments. I mean, the pivotal comment actually was I was monitoring the carpool lane at the school, and this guy was in a Bentley convertible, taking smoking a cigar, and we had a no smoking policy on campus. I went out there and politely asked him to put it out. Took another puff, blew it in my face and said, "Petty rules from petty people." And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, where I basically said, I was leaning this direction anyway, but at that point I just said, yeah, this is not going to be a long-term career for me. And my eyes and ears are wide open to, where I could go from here.
Did you always have the salesperson bug? Because I think some people are born to do sales and some people just aren't. So how do you transition from social work school, a relatively humble career, let's say,
Yeah.
into sales, which is much more ego driven, much more numbers driven, much more money driven?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a house of sales. My father was a career salesman, and spent the greater portion of his life in the car business. Started off, selling cars at the bottom. Worked his way up to general manager, made a good living, but he worked his tail off 6 days a week, long hours. My brother followed in his footsteps, same path, and actually became a GM, partial owner. So I sat at the dinner table every night hearing about deals that were being closed and so forth. So I was surrounded by that. And, as a kid growing up, I mean, I was always selling. I was always selling me and always trying to get people to buy into my ideas and follow my lead. Starting off in elementary and then middle, junior high, high school, college. I mean, I was never really much of a follower. I was a leader. And, that behooved me. in many ways. But when you're a leader, if you're giving the wrong message, right, you're conveying the wrong message to people, then it could turn into a disaster. And so, after having gone through what I went through, at this point in my life, I still acknowledge the fact that, I'm able to speak in a certain way where people seem to buy into what I'm selling and they want to follow. And so now I realize that I have to be more careful than ever to ensure that the message I'm giving is a healthy message and that people they're going to move in a progressional manner that's going to behoove them as well and not hurt them in the long run.
Did you ever see your dad in action in like an actual sales scenario? Because some people get inspiration from their parents. And did you ever think, oh, wow, this is incredible. I wish I could do this. I wish I could make someone buy something.
I mean, I saw my dad in action a million times. Yeah, my dad
Yeah.
always selling. My dad was. No one really knew who my dad was. Unless you lived.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, because he's a salesman. He was at a show, right?
Right.
People used to call my dad Giggles, and the fact of the matter is when he was in the house, the guy never smiled once. He was in his bed and he was watching TV or sports, and he really wasn't that pleasant to be around. But when he had his salesman hat on and he was out and about in the public, he was a completely different character, and that resonated with me. But I sold cars in college. My dad wanted me to work over the summer, so I sold. I sold at the dealership where he and my brother worked, and being green and not being able to necessarily close deals at the very beginning. Oftentimes, my brother, more so than anyone, would come in and actually close that deal for me and help put money in my pocket. So I got to see firsthand how how it was kind of done.
Interesting. So, how did you transition from the career that you were doing to pharmaceutical sales specifically?
Yeah, I mean, so I was talking with one of the parents, and we had a good conversation. His child was in a lot of trouble all the time, so I was helping out tremendously, and they were appreciative. And we just started talking personally on a personal level. And he said one day, Alec, what do you see yourself doing? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm doing it. And he's like, nah. He's like, I don't see you doing this for your career. There's more to you than this. I can see it. And I said, well, what do you see me doing? Like, I'm open to suggestions. I'm still very much in the learning phase.
Was he in
And
sales as well?
he
Was
was a
he?
doctor. He was a
Ah,
doctor.
doctor. Oh, okay. Interesting.
And he said he recommended pharmaceuticals. He says, I'm a huge prescriber for one of Eli Lilly's products. I'm sure if I recommended you, they would give you an interview. And I said, you get me an interview and I'll come charging through that door, and it was kind of, no holds barred from that point moving forward. I mean, you get the job and then you go to training and it's intense and it's a couple of months in Indianapolis. It's exams every day. You fail, you go home. And you're competing with the people in your class and you're trying to get what I remember they had something called the peer award. And, I fought feverishly for that award. There was initial training and then a 3-month training, 3-month school. The first training, I didn't get it and I was devastated. So already I knew like how competitive I was. At 3-month school, I did get it and was voted amongst my peers as the number one guy in that training class. So, like I said, right from the beginning, I just couldn't stand not hearing my name called, or when they put it up on the board on the computer or whatnot, and they had 300 or 1,000 people ranked. Honestly, if I wasn't number one, I look at number one. If my name wasn't there and I had to scroll, I was not a good person to be around. I wasn't pleasant, and my wife already started to see the inevitable change in me.
Is there a little bit of Shakespearean foreshadowing with this doctor person? Because it sounds like, and I've seen the documentary Crime of the Century, where you describe the typical 4 types of doctors, the 4 different colors. And we can
Yep.
talk about that a bit more obviously later. But it was this guy one of those doctors that you would eventually end up going after to sell them opioids?
I actually didn't go after him. Well, he wasn't. He wouldn't be a prescriber of opioids. He was a primary care physician, internal medicine. Now, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of internists that do prescribe opioids, and the pain specialist would say that's problem number one, right? That they shouldn't be prescribing, but they have a license and they can if they want. It's shunned upon now more than ever, right? Because they didn't have that additional training in pain management. Um, but no, he wouldn't have fit the criteria. He was more of an analytical, more science oriented, more the type of guy that would tear apart a study and really look at the data. As I mentioned in the Crime of the Century, I believe, I really went after the Reds, the drivers. Yeah, the guys who were driven by money, more so than anything else, kind of the what's in it for me, the whiff 'em. And as soon as I came across a position where they basically made it clear that if I didn't have something to offer them and better their current situation, there would be no need for me to visit that practice anymore.
Is there a way to do this career path and still make a good amount of money without going into the shady world of, it's super dangerous opioid dealing, I guess, is the
Oh
question.
yeah, I mean for sure. I mean, opioid is just one small portion of the pharmaceutical industry. Um, you know, it's been kind of portrayed that I was like this master at selling opioids. I sold long before I sold opioids. I sold antidepressants. I sold antipsychotics. I sold um, uh, anti seizure drugs. I sold a whole plethora of medications and did very well. The biggest mistake I made, well, probably not the biggest, but one of the biggest mistakes I made was getting involved in opioids in the first place. At the company where I was first exposed to opioids, I was originally brought on board to sell a drug for obstructive sleep apnea and narcolepsy, and I loved it, and I was doing great because I was selling to psychiatrists mainly, and my social work background kind of led me to be able to have a conversation with a psychiatrist and understood kind of psychotropics and excessive daytime sleepiness and how it could be misconstrued as depression. So we had good conversations and things were well, and I was happy and I was doing very well. The company decided they made a decision to cut the sales force in two, and they actually offered me a promotion. The promotion was to sell on the pain side of the company as opposed to the side that I was initially brought on board with, which was the neuroscience side. And so, of course, I was offered a promotion and said, yeah, I'm like, this isn't really my cup of tea, pain management. I really don't know anything about it, but I'll learn it and I'll do it and I'll be successful. And I went on to be successful. And then I got out of the industry. I actually got into the sleep diagnostic business and worked as a director of business development for many years. Was out of pharmaceuticals because I really didn't love the industry at that point in my life. And I got a call from someone at Insys because they were basically bringing on what we call a Me Too drug. It's basically a drug that's almost identical to what I sold back in the day, with that pain management company, with just a different mechanism of action. Instead of putting a tablet between your cheek and gum, you're spraying it underneath your tongue. And they called me because they knew I was successful and offered me a job.
And the money was too good, and the title was substantially better than your previous one.
So oddly enough, while I was working at the sleep company, right around that time, Medicare had cut the reimbursement rates of sleep reimbursement tremendously. So the owner of my company told me that I was going to be taking a pay cut. So when I was offered that position, I went back to him and said, "What do you think?" And he said, "I think you do both. And that way you make ends meet and everything works out. I don't have a problem with it. I know you can continue to do the job." So I took the job at Insys in addition to the job I was currently working. The money at Insys originally that was offered to me wasn't so great. I was just a manager, making decent money, but the two jobs together was good. And I was working hard, and I had so much success at Insys within a period of 3 months. They then offered me a promotion to be the vice president of sales. Once I accepted that position, obviously I resigned from the sleep diagnostic business. I couldn't do it. And it wasn't even logistically possible because I was working in South Florida and I had to move to Arizona to be in the corporate office. Obviously, as a VP, they want you, at the headquarters, which was another disaster. My whole career, I always said I would never work in the corporate office. It's all about the visual, right? It's all about what time is your car there in the morning? What time does your car leave at night? All the nonsense and all the crap that I never wanted to have anything to do with.
The worst parts of corporate America, like
Yeah, but the title, my ego couldn't deny the title. Vice president of sales, head of sales. I'm like, okay, I got to do this. And that was, again, another situation where my ego got in the way because I would have been better off staying where I was, just being a manager and working the sleep job, and would have had a much better life.
was that Cephalon? Was that a different company?
The company where I initially sold the pain
Yeah.
meds, yeah, that
No,
was
no.
something.
So that
Oh,
was Cephalon, okay. But Cephalon never had any problems with regulators and stuff like that.
oh yeah, no, they had plenty of problems. They had the problems that every pain management company has, where they pay hundreds of millions of dollars in civil fines. I think they paid well over 300 million. They were in hot water till they're still in hot water. Teva took over the company, and they're still dealing with lawsuits. The difference is, or the caveat, is that there were never any criminal sanctions, right? Um, and that's very similar to almost every pain management company in the industry. Insys was, from to the best of my knowledge, the first company and only company where people were sought after criminally and actually, ended up to be indicted and go to prison.
Wasn't there also three people from Purdue Pharma, or is that, am I wrong?
I don't believe anybody went to prison from Purdue. I'm almost 99% sure. I know originally they pled guilty to misdemeanors. I don't even think felonies came into play. I know they paid a ton of civil penalties, went bankrupt. But in the end of the day, they made a ton of money and came out smelling like a rose. I mean, the media has exposed their wrongdoing, and there's plenty of people who are disgusted and have nothing but hatred towards the Sackler family. But as a general statement, they really came out untouched and unscathed.
Right, which is crazy. So what makes your company so special? I guess that you got charged with criminalities.
Well, I mean, to be clear, we deserved everything we got. We were a hundred
Yeah,
percent. We were a
not
hundred
not
percent.
implying that. Just I
Yeah,
just meant that more sense. Like why didn't they do
right.
that with Purdue, which was much earlier and had a much bigger impact on society and opioids in general?
No question about it. I mean, you can't compare the notoriety and the dollars, with say OxyContin to, what we had at Insys. We're just like a little blip on the radar. But for one, I mean, we were the number one IPO in the country in 2013. Be careful what you wish for. We certainly didn't need that kind of attention in the middle of a pandemic. Two, we did not have a compliance department in place, for the majority of the time that we worked. Which is not that unusual for very small companies, small biotech companies. They typically come to market and want to make some money, and then they'll start to put in the other pieces of the puzzle that need to be there, which is a huge mistake. I would recommend to any company that from day one you should have a compliance department in place. I would have bitched and moaned that they had a compliance department, but in the end of the day, that compliance department, without a question, would have prevented me from going too far and kept me, from ending up doing time in prison. Um, the owner of the company, talk about ego. Never met a man with a bigger ego than that, and he just didn't feel that he needed to spend money on compliance and lawyers and so forth to safeguard the practices that yeah. And it wasn't until there was a whistleblower and we were being investigated by the DOJ that he eventually started to bring in outside counsel. But in this situation, it was way too little, too late.
It's fascinating to me that with the amount of money they were making, they were not investing in such a crucial part. It's like having a really nice apartment but no lock.
Right. We literally, when I joined the company, we had a human resources manager, or maybe her title was human resources director, and she didn't even have a master's in human resources yet. I think it was like a year and a half later that she obtained her master's. I mean, we were running lean and mean, and guys like me, where if you give me a rope to hang myself, like I'll do it, meaning like I'm just going to run with it. And I was running full speed and no one was stopping me. In fact, no matter how well we did, no matter how many prescriptions we generated, no matter how many dollars we made, it was never enough. It was like more, more, more. Literally every day the numbers were scrutinized. And if the numbers went down even the slightest amount, there was hell to pay at the meeting at 8:30 in the morning. So it wasn't like, hey, we have a Schedule 2 opioid here. Let's take a step back. Let's assess what's going on. Make sure we're being, uh,
Ethical.
responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah, responsible, ethical. And no, those conversations never came up. It was just about dollars, dollars, dollars. And for a guy like me, who grew up in a house of sales and then watched every sales movie you could possibly imagine, I'm just thinking, let's go. It's green. The light is green. Okay, we keep going. I did have other people in the company that were in different roles that kind of looked at me sometimes and said, yeah, you're doing great, but maybe you should slow down a little bit, but those weren't the people that I was reporting to, right? Those weren't the decision makers. So I always made sure that I did what I was supposed to do as it pertains to the decision makers. And again, that's something I've learned, and that's something that I talk about on podcasts and when I talk to universities and so forth, that just because you have a boss and they're a decision maker doesn't mean they're making the right decision on your behalf, and ultimately you're responsible for your own decision. And if you can't make the decision that you think is right, then you got to take the high road and move on. It's easier said than done. I didn't do it, that's for sure. That's for sure. I mean, it would have meant me walking away from tons of money, not to mention every other benefit that was given me. And I wasn't strong enough and didn't have enough of a moral compass to make that manly decision to walk away.
How did you excel so quickly in those, 5, 6 months, year, whatever it was? You accelerated your career so much, obviously being a good salesman, but what's like the big secret? What's the one thing that, say, 99% of people in your area do not have that you possess, do you believe?
Well, I mean, you have to be able to read your customer. Like, within 2 to 3 minutes of having an initial conversation, you have to be able to size them up and understand what it is that makes them tick. And if you can't do that, you're going to lose them, and you're done. Like, you don't get another opportunity to get in front of them. But to be honest with you, it takes time. Meaning, once you size them up and figure out what makes them tick, then you got to tick them. Right? They got to tick every day, over and over, for years. By the time I took that job, at Insys, I had relationships with physicians, all over the country. So I already knew what made them tick. And, now it was just basically putting my team in place, because I couldn't do it all on my own. So I put together a very specific team that possessed, very, identical traits, skills, and characteristics that could help carry out, this endeavor that we were trying to embark on. I had a phenomenal group of salespeople as far as my managers and directors. People would, sigh and say, "Oh yeah, you had a phenomenal team. Look where they got you. Look what they did. These guys are horrible." In hindsight, you can't argue with the results. The results are disastrous, and they're horrid. But pertaining to your question around sales is so much about the WIFM. What's in it for me? What can you do for me? And you have to be able to find a way to provide to these people, because no one in this world does anything for nothing. I mean, I'll backtrack on that. I found some really good-hearted people that do. And those are the people that you want to surround yourself with, because those are the people that really care about you and society. But as a general statement, especially in the world of sales, when you're knocking on someone's door uninvited and you're intruding on them in the middle of their workday where they're trying to make a living, they're thinking either A, you're going to cost me money by taking up my time and taking me away from patients, or B, you're going to make me money by providing me something tangible. And if you can't provide something, of some sort on some level, then there's nothing there for you. But it's the art of persuasion. I mean, passion. You have to exude every message with a level of passion that's unprecedented, that's unsurpassed by anybody else. Any interview I've ever gone on, even when I haven't been given the job, people have told me, "Listen, you're not qualified, but I will tell you this: you're the most passionate man I've ever come across the table with." And
you're selling yourself as the product. You might not know everything, but you're selling yourself as the person that could potentially figure out everything.
Yeah, the product is always secondary. You're the sale. You don't sell yourself, you don't get an opportunity to sell your product. Nobody cares about the product. They want to make sure that they're listening to somebody that's worth their time. And if you can't buy their time, I always say there's 3 elements in sales: time, access, and interest. A, will they give you the time to convey the message? B, can you access them? Meaning, can you walk in that side door, that back door that goes into their kitchen without going through the waiting room whenever you want? And interest. Are they actually interested in what you're saying? They're not going to be interested in what you're saying if they're not interested in you. They're not going to give you the time if they don't believe that you're going to, be worthwhile of their time, and they're not going to give you access. And you can't sell without time, access, and interest.
I think it's also, the way you talk about something with not just passion, but with this. And I've seen in other reviews, I've seen it in documentaries, genuine. Even when you're wrong, even when you've committed some terrible things, some mistakes. I don't know. Even talking right now, I feel like you do come from a genuine place, whether you've made mistakes or not. It's, and forgiveness and all that stuff. That's not for me to decide. That's for the world to decide. But it seems like you're genuine. And I think even in sales, probably a big factor in a sale.
Yeah, I'm super genuine. I'm authentic. I mean, even my girlfriend now, she's like, wow. She's like, you never sugarcoat anything. You just say it how it is. And
Yeah. And that's a double-edged sword as well, in a way.
especially with a girlfriend, right? How do I
Right.
look today? I'm like, you know what?
Right.
Honestly, that's not the best dress for you. Um, I mean, I have two daughters, so I've learned to be careful. And there's a lot of reasons why you want to be really careful with how you speak to a female. You don't want to give them a complex or anything like that. But I'm genuine, and people understand that what you see is what you get. I mean, even when I sat down at the dinner table with a physician and proposed, quid pro quo, and basically said, listen, we're going to offer you speaker honorariums, but we're going to expect you to write prescriptions in lieu of those honorariums. I would always preface the conversation by saying, listen, we're going to have a conversation here. It may not come across right with you. You may be offset by it. You may be disgusted by it. I'll tell you what, the moment you feel uncomfortable, either A, you get up from the table, or B, you tell me to get up from the table. I'll take care of the tab. You enjoy the rest of your meal. But may I proceed forward? So, right away, it's like I laid it out on the table. And now, I do these podcasts, I do interviews. I mean, for me, it's so clear and evident that it's a challenge. It's extremely difficult to carry this burden, right, on a daily basis. And oftentimes I've asked myself, like, how am I going to do it? Like, when I got indicted and I knew I was going to prison, and then I knew I was coming out of prison, like, how am I going to face the music?
I'm going to
And
live with myself.
yeah, how
Yeah.
am I going to look myself in the mirror every day and get dressed and go to work, and humble myself? And believe me, you got to humble yourself after you come out of prison, because you're not getting the jobs that you were before. Um, but that's nothing compared to the patients and their caregivers and their loved ones and what they went through as a result of the part that we took in this whole disaster. But I have two daughters. I have a 15-year-old and a 21-year-old, and thank God for them, because it's because of them that I get myself up every morning, shave, get dressed, and go to work. Because
Have they seen some of the documentaries, some of like the nastier things in your past, I guess?
it's interesting. We never really talk about it. I think they shy away. I know that, they've searched me on the internet, but I don't really think that they've gotten into the weeds at all.
Really?
Yeah. And I even, I wrote a book, and I'm pretty candid and transparent about myself and my book and what I've went through and the things that I've done. And my daughter, my youngest one, said, Dad, I should really read it. Well, I gave it to her, and it's still sitting on the nightstand. She never opened it. And this was like 6 months ago. I just don't think that they think they're ready, and that's okay. And I don't know that they'll ever be ready, because when they really dig, and one day they will, I think they're just going to be knocked off their freaking chairs. But what I do now, and what I've always done, is I try to build a stronger relationship every single day, so that when that does happen, they'll know that there's a different side to their father. And there is a different side to their father. There is a personal side, and there was a sales side, much like my dad. The difference is, on my personal side, my dad never hugged me, never kissed me. He really never even shook my hand. He would just give me a nod. I tell my kids I love them every day. I give them a hug and a kiss. So, I have learned from my past, what I want to do, what I don't want to do, and what I need to do, and how I'm going to change moving forward. And this whole debacle with regards to the Insys and the pain management is just, another thing that I need to try and do my part to right those wrongs. It's never going to be fixed. I mean, it's lives have been destroyed. Um, but for me, you started off the conversation at the beginning, like you wanted to learn more about pain management, and I can talk to that. Sure, I have some experience there, but I still don't consider myself an expert in that arena at all. I would never really go out and start speaking on pain management. What I do is I speak to young people, college educated, graduate school, or people just getting out. I talk to them about this instinct that many people have where when they're in school, they want to come out and they want to take over the world,
Right.
and they think that they just want to make millions and millions of dollars at any cost. And I try to help them understand that that doesn't bring happiness, and there's no balance with that. And, family and friends and, you know, in hobbies integrated with work, that you should work to live, not live to work. And for many years, I lived to work, which is one of the main reasons why, my 22-year marriage ended up in divorce, which, to this day is extremely difficult for me because, you know, even with all the bad things I've done, I never wanted to see my family torn apart. I wanted to be able to be at the dinner table with my wife and kids. I wanted to sit there as a family. We can't do those things anymore. But that's just another result of the mistakes that I made. And there's no question in this world that you have to pay for your mistakes. You will pay. It may take a lot longer than maybe you might think or anticipate, or you may be one of those people who thinks that you'll never pay. But based on my own experience, there's no doubt in my mind that what goes around comes around.
I guess I should be a little bit more clear. I am interested in pain management. I am interested in the Sacklers. I am interested in that world. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, but more so I'm interested in the human journey from any perspective, unique perspective that I get from. So I've strived to get interesting people from all sorts of backgrounds. People
Yeah,
that are UFC fighters, people that have done time in prison, people that are authors, journals, comedians. I've kind of just enjoyed the learning part. How does someone get into sales? Okay, how does someone start doing fishy things in sales? How do they get arrested? What happens after? Is there a redemption story? Do people deserve second chances? More complex human conversations as opposed to I don't really necessarily care about how these guys made $6 billion. I know what they did. It's pretty
right.
simple. I
Right.
want to know who the people are. What are they like? Like that.
Yeah.
That's way more interesting to me, at least.
Yeah, I mean, we could start talking about the receptors that are affected by opioids, but I mean, that's
Yeah.
just stuff I read in a book, and I could regurgitate that like anybody. That doesn't really mean much, and I don't think that the people who took these medications really care a whole lot. What they know is that there's use, misuse, abuse, addiction, and diversion, and all of them are lend itself to what we call the slippery slope. And as it pertains to me, that's the problem I think that you have in sales, where you are heavily commissioned or bonus based. You're on that slippery slope, and you take a little step, towards that line, and eventually over time you take another step, another step, another step, because there's other people taking those steps, and they're competing with you. And you're looking at them from, at the side, and you're looking at them from behind, and you're like, shit, I better take another risk,
Right. Right.
right? Because you're so competitive that you don't want somebody to catch you, especially when you tasted that success, especially when you've been number one. You don't want to lose that number one. I mean, talk to any professional athlete, talk to a tennis player who's ranked number one. They're hanging on like a thread. And it's like, I'm not saying that somebody should look at me and hear me and say, oh, Alec, woe is me. I feel so bad for you that you were worried about losing your number one ranking. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that psychologically, it's almost a sickness. And this is what causes people to continue to take greater and greater risk, right? Because they just don't want to lose. And so that's something that we should be cognizant of. Like, why am I so interested? Why am I so insistent on being number one? Like, what does it even mean? Doesn't it mean much more to have been number one with your kids, or or the number one coach of your children's softball team, or I mean, I'm in a sales job now. I can tell you, I've been doing this job 2.5 years. I've never been number one. Um, there's 30 of us, and I like to be in the top five. because I want to make money. I still want to do well. And I want to work. I mean, these guys are giving me a job of, a felon, and I don't want to waste their leads. Like, I want to be appreciative, and I want to have some, I want to feel good about what I'm doing, but I've never been number one. I have no problem with it. I'm usually around number three. Even if I'm two, I look at the board, I'm like, I'm two. I'm pushing a little too hard. Like, I like
Yeah.
to be like between three and five.
Yeah.
And even in my book, I tell you, listen, if you want to be number one, like, we can talk about it. We can have a one off, but that's not really what I'm aiming to teach people right now. I want to teach you how to be in the top 10%, and then be in the top 90 to 98% of every other aspect of your life. And I can tell you how to do that.
Right. You know what's interesting then? You bring that up. I do wonder what happens when someone does see that life and has the inverse reaction. So the reason I say that is because I didn't work in sales. I worked in engineering in corporate America before I switched careers into this. And when I started working engineering, I was 23 years old, approaching a six-figure salary in my small city. I was living in Canada. I was commuting to Michigan, working in automotive. And I saw the corporate world. I saw this rat race. I saw the let's keep grinding. Let's get the next check. Let's impress the boss. Let's stay the extra hour. Let's stay the extra 2 hours. And it's always like, let's come in earlier. Who's going to get to work first? Who's going to get the boss coffee? And I had the complete opposite reaction. And I'm not. I'm very competitive. I played soccer, basketball, tennis. I played every sport, and usually we were top three in every sport I played in. And I don't know what the reaction is or why I had this reaction, but for me it was like, no, 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 this is not what I want at all. This is horrendous. I want to make sure that I'm out at fucking 4 o'clock because that's what you pay me. You pay me till 4. I leave at 4. You pay me to come in at 9. I'm in at 9. Once I'm done, I'm out. And maybe it's just a luck of the draw. Maybe it's upbringing. I don't know what it is because I know people around me who have similar upbringings who didn't have that. So I wonder what that actually is that triggers that. Let's run to this or let's run away from this reaction.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, personally, I think that it speaks to, the true inner confidence that a person has. I think that, because you had so much success and you were an athlete and you started to really get to know yourself, that you were able to identify, what was going to be good for you and what was not going to be good
Yeah.
for you. I consider myself weak, that I basically decided to join the rat race and compete in that rat race like a fool every single day. I mean, I can't get those years back in my life that I lost and that the
Right.
time that I missed from my kids. I was traveling, 3 nights a week, every week for years, and then I'd come home and I should have been spending every waking second with my kids, but I was freaking exhausted, And so, I'd come home Friday and I'd sleep half the day on Saturday. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's truly stupidity, quite frankly. And I'm not knocking these guys that are out there doing it, right? I mean,
There are some people that truly are happy with that lifestyle and the things that lifestyle brings them, but I think it's also a reaction to how do I feel when I do get that promotion? I can buy that car. For me, it was like I'm still going to the same rat cage. Why? Who cares how nice the car is? I'm still in this cubicle. I'm someone's bitch. Like, why does it matter?
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. I think that ego is just a disaster because ego really equates to lack of self. It's really a lack of confidence, and you're trying to overcompensate by driving a nice car and wearing a nice suit and living in a nice house and being able to tell
Right.
people about it. The people that are truly confident with themselves don't give a shit. And I'm not there yet, but I'm working feverishly on a daily basis to get there through an abundance of mechanisms. Doing this podcast, hearing you speak, it's just another reminder of, that's the type of guy that I want to be. And by the way, my job now, and I know they don't like it. It's 8:30 to 5:30. I get there at 8:30 and 5:29. I'm looking at the clock, and as soon as it hits 3:0, I'm out the door. And
Right.
I'm one of the oldest guys there. I'm 49, working with a bunch of kids between the age of 25 and 35, and they're staying till 7, 8, 9 o'clock. And they're open on the weekends. I don't come in. And I talk to some of them. I don't want to be the guy that says, "Hey, man, you shouldn't work as much because the owners will get annoyed." But I do talk to some of them, and I try to help them understand that you're going to burn yourself out, and you're probably going to regret it. You do need to have some balance, and you're making good money.
What
You
more do you
need,
need?
yeah,
Yeah.
right. You need to understand like when is enough enough, And you bring up a really good point, and I don't even know how I missed it to this point, but I had a gambling problem, back in the day. I haven't made a bet since February 22nd, 2013, and I have no urges to bet whatsoever. But again, when I was gambling, like gamblers always lose in the end, but there were
Yeah.
times when I was up, but
Right.
I never walked
You
away.
couldn't cash out.
No,
Yeah.
because it was never enough,
Right.
and you go to the GA meetings and they're like, you could fill this whole room with cash and it still wouldn't be enough. And that's exactly right. So it just lends itself to my personality, my DNA. And I have to do something just robust, like gigantic to turn that DNA upside down and just get, like I got to reboot the whole thing. And by the way, going to prison helped me tremendously in that manner because, all for me, prison, I'm not here to talk about the horror stories and the fights and all that. I'm here to tell you that for me, prison it's a long time out. It's a grueling time out. It's like when you're a little kid and your parents put you in your room or they put you in the corner to think about what you did wrong. That's
Do
what
that
you
for 2 years.
Yeah, that's what you do in prison. You think. You sit in your bed because there ain't nowhere to go, nowhere to move, or otherwise you're getting in somebody's way. You put your radio on. You maybe listen to some sports radio if the signal's okay, and you get the radio from commissary after a couple months, and you just think and you ruminate and you go over and over and over in your mind like, what the hell did I do, and how could I be so freaking irresponsible and just stupid at the same time when all along you thought you were an intelligent guy, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna say like you know I some of it is luck. To be perfectly honest, it's luck. I don't know why I reacted the way I reacted. I don't know why you reacted the way you reacted. I completely changed my life from what people wanted me to do to what I wanted to do. But I don't know what that reason. I don't know if it's the luck of the draw. If that could be, let's say, more institutionalized. If that could be trained. If that could be educated. I now live in Spain. I live in Europe. I don't necessarily see the greed and the rat race as much here, but then I see another element of the problems that they have here, which is like people are broke. No other way to put it. People do not have enough. They're just getting by. A lot of them my age. So there's no real solutions in life. I think there's just trade offs. So if you can find a place where you're most comfortable, then stick to it and just continue doing that. And if people start forcing you, or you start thinking like, okay, I need to do this for the next dollar. I need to do this for the next car. Like you're losing. You've lost that battle. You're no longer in
100%.
control.
I
The
mean,
car is
I
going
say
off the
that
rail.
totally. I mean, that's how I end every talk with these college students. I just tell them, listen, my takeaway message is this: when you wake up in the morning and you look at yourself in the mirror, if you're not thinking positive thoughts, you got to get to work. Because if you're putting yourself down and you say, I don't like the way I look, or I don't like, how I'm doing in school, or I don't like the group of friends I have, and you know, you're lending yourself to a position where you're going to allow other people to influence you, and you're always going to be trying to measure up. If you can find a way to somehow have that self confidence, you'll be able to do anything you want in life to make you happy. And you'll also be able to reject anyone who's trying to get you to do something that's counterproductive to what you
That's the real
really.
power. That's the real power. It's not money. It's the ability to be your own person. That's like the real, I think, message, I guess.
100%. And, I think that the people that have come across me all my life always thought that I was this like self confident, like happy go lucky guy. And the fact of the matter is, I wasn't. I was never happy because I always wanted more and I was always trying to impress somebody and I was always trying to get a promotion. Um, and that's just, again, I'm not feeling bad for myself, but if you're one of those people, I do have a heart for you. And I'd like to see you try to, take the appropriate steps to flip that thing upside down.
I want to know a little bit about what that lifestyle was like at your peak in this terms of sales, not peak in terms of life. What was your like? I don't know, day to day. What was your week like? You said you were working a lot, probably paying doctors lucrative dinners, and what was the
Oh yeah.
lifestyle like?
I mean, money was not an issue. I never worried about money. That was the one thing I didn't worry about. My wife and I, like, we lived a nice life. We lived in a nice place. We drove nice cars. We always went out for super nice dinners, but we weren't travelers and we weren't people to go out and buy like crazy, like handbags and jewelry. So like we had plenty of money because we actually didn't spend that much as it pertains to, with the relevance of how much we were making. So we never, like, my kids, like whatever they wanted, they got, which was a mistake. I love my kids to death, but I know now from dealing with them now after prison that they're spoiled, and I can't even blame them. That's my fault, right? I'd give them my credit card and they'd go downstairs and they'd go shopping and they'd buy food and then then I'm not talking about McDonald's. I'm talking about, nice steak dinners,
Yeah,
at
they
any.
wouldn't know the value of money from
They
that
had
kind of
no
experience.
idea. They had
Yeah.
no idea the value of money. I mean, these kids wanted to get their nails done the other day, and it cost me $100, and it bothered me, and it bothered me because they didn't even think twice about it. But again, um, my life was through the week we worked, um, and we did lavish meals every night, and I would meet doctors out, and I would set them up at the club with bottle service and
Strip
girls.
clubs and
Oh,
whatever.
strip clubs and girls, whatever they wanted. I mean, 9 times out of 10, I would just go and I'd be there around 10 p.m. and be out by 10:30 because I'd just set them up. And then I'd say, you guys have a great night. There were times where I stayed. When you do this so many years, you kind of really get desensitized and bored with the whole thing. So it's better just to go and just hook them up and take care of them, make sure they're all ready and good to go, and then you follow up with them the next day, make sure they had a good time. But the dinners I always enjoyed, for the most part. We'd meet them at like 7:30, and I'd do the dinner to 10, and then I'd set them up and be on my way home. But my wife joined me for most of the dinners. Even my kids, I brought my kids. I mean, I was the vice president of sales. What were they going to say? And when we went to the dinners, I always brought, if my wife and kids didn't come, I always brought home food. And I'm not talking about McDonald's. I'm talking about steaks. I'm talking about bottles of wine. I'm talking about plates of sushi. And then on the weekends, honestly, we would me and my we I'll speak for myself. I was indulging. I love to smoke weed. I was doing coke. I was hanging out at the pool. I was going to hotels. Um, I tried to make the
It's
most
hard to make
money.
good decisions with that kind of stuff in your life,
Yeah, yeah,
with
it
the
really
state of mind
is.
you're on most of those things.
Yeah, and I really don't think it's good for anybody. I know it wasn't good for me, but I really don't think it's good for anybody to be in that position because I think that, and you see this right with people who are famous, like movie stars and musicians. Like, I just feel like if you have too much money and you have too much time, like, you get bored, and you want to try to find something that satisfies you. You lose sight of everything and anything that's important in your life. Now, I live for, ordering a good pizza, not Domino's. Like, I'm from New York. I like a good pizza,
All right, fair.
and getting a good Netflix movie, and, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a movie coming out on Netflix based on this story. Yeah, it's called Pain Hustlers, and it's coming out October 27th on Netflix. It's starring
Are
Chris
you in
Evans.
it? Are you
So
like
I'm not
as a
in it.
consultant? You consult?
I did do a little consultant work,
Whoa,
a small
cool.
amount. But it's Emily Blunt and Chris Evans, and it's loosely based on the Insys story. It's based on the book by Evan Hughes called The Hard Sell, and then I noticed he just rebranded the name, if that's the right verbiage, and he changed it to Pain Hustlers to mimic the movie. And it's going to be really interesting for me. The characters are loosely based on people from Insys. So, like Chris Evans, for example, he's not playing Alec Burlakoff. He's a fictional character, and he's probably playing a combination of, say, 4 or 5 people in Insys, right? But I'm nervous about it, because my kids will watch it for sure, and they'll put two and two together, and
Yeah. Will it be a
so
glorification of your worst self?
I think it's going to be. I mean, they're comparing it to like the Wolf of Wall Street. I just read something that the movie, has full nudity, drug use, bad language. It's not going to be pretty, and they don't want it to be pretty. They want it to be entertaining because it's a movie, right? So they want to put people in seats per se, right? It's going to be on Netflix, but that causes me anxiety. It's like this thing never ends. But there's two things that I can do. Either one, I can run and hide and just put myself in a shell underneath the sand, or I can face the music and continue to try to talk about my bad decisions. And again, not just the bad decisions about selling a Schedule II opioid in a way that lacked morals and integrity, but just bad decisions about the type of man that I wanted to become in life, and how that led me down to, um, the bottom, the rock bottom, literally. I mean, when you're indicted and the federal government, the feds come raiding your home, guns blazing,
Yeah. When you
and
Google your name and the first thing that comes up is a .gov website, that's not a good sign.
not a good sign. And for a kid who grew up, again, I'm not crying poverty or anything. Like, I grew up in a normal home with parents, and there's no excuse, right? Like, I went to prison with people, and I made friends with some really good people who did some really bad things. But most of those people, I don't want to make excuses for them, but in many ways, it's like they didn't really have a choice. They sold drugs and they did this, that, and the other. I had a choice, and I made a bad choice, and so it's so much harder for me to forgive myself than it is for me to forgive people like that.
Right. And I guess while we're towards the end here, I hope you don't mind me holding you a bit longer. I had some questions about this industry in general. So, first question, I mean, this is a stupid one, I feel, but I do feel like I have to ask it. What happens with all that money and all those fines that these big companies have to pay to the government?
You know what? Honestly, man, I really don't know.
No, no. I'm always wondered when I hear these big numbers and I see like, oh, we got him, $6 billion. Where's that $6 billion
Yeah,
going?
I truly don't even know. But I'll tell you this, like, for example, what really bothers me specifically as it pertains to my situation at Insys, whatever money was paid, whatever fines and so forth, my understanding is it didn't go to the patients or to their caregivers or family members or loved ones. They didn't get the money. I've been following it and I don't see it. I see the money going to the government. And I'm not saying that the government won't put that money to good use. I have no idea.
Maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Maybe they will, maybe they
It
won't.
goes
But
into a black hole and then we don't know.
exactly, exactly. But I don't see the money going to the people who lost, and suffered, which is interesting.
But aren't they involved in the lawsuits as well, or no? Or is that's more civil?
Well,
How does
it's
that work?
civil. It's civil, but again, I don't know the particulars, but I just don't know of any cases where, like, for example, a whistleblower, right? They'll get paid, or however, in this instance case, I don't even know if they're getting paid because the company went bankrupt. But the whistleblowers would get paid, and much more handsomely than the people or the patients who suffered. I mean, you just see this time and time again. It's just some odd things that go on.
It's just one
Um,
big game, and we're all
it
pretending like
really
there's more
is.
to it than it is.
And I'm not knocking the government. I mean, because they did something really significant, right? This is the first time that people selling an opioid in a way that is not appropriate, were charged and found guilty. And
You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as the expression goes, right? Because there was a lot of good people behind trying to stop what you're doing from a just stopping the criminality of it and hurting more people. So
yeah, the scary part is that it's huge conglomerate, and it's going on every day as we speak. And the fentanyl disaster is worse now than it's ever been. It's everywhere, right? It's in marijuana. It's laced. It's in cocaine. People are dying every day. I follow it because I've had a significant. It's huge in my life, and I tell my kids, like, I get it. Like, people smoke pot and stuff, but you guys don't understand. It's not like when Daddy was smoking pot. Like, this could have fentanyl in it. Like, you could die. And so it's just there's just so many messages to be conveyed, and I'm just one small little person trying to get something out. And why do I do it? I'm not even sure. I can
It's
tell
like a
you.
therapy session.
I was just going to say, I can tell you it's therapeutic, though. It
Yeah.
is therapeutic because, I think the others that were indicted and went to prison, to me, it seems like they've made a decision to just put this behind them and not talk about it and just forget about it. I can't speak for them, but that's what it looks like. That won't work for me because I'm not that guy. I've never been that guy. I'm not one to run and hide. I'm one to face the music. I had a guy, honestly, the other day at work. We had an argument. It was getting very combative because it's sales, and sales sucks, to be honest with you. But it's about all I can do right now. And we had an argument, and the guy actually spouted out, and he said, "Get the fuck out of my office. You killed people." And that was literally just last week. So, and the old me, I would have like blown my temper and lost my head, but I've got to understand that this comes with the territory, and it may never go away. And if it does go away, that's not good either, because I need to be reminded of that at least from time to time, so that I never forget, and so that I continue to try. Just try. You got to make the effort. Most people don't make the effort. I didn't make the effort. I can tell you, I do make the effort now.
Yeah, that's a really tough, fair, whatever word you want to use. It's a burden that you carry with you.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
mean,
yeah,
go ahead.
I'm more also interested in, maybe you since you've worked in the space, is there a solution to stop this massive pharmaceutical monster that's now grown too big for its own good? What is the solution? Is there a way to stop this? What's the
I,
biggest way to do it?
I actually do have an answer for that, because I couldn't answer your last two questions, and I don't know if anyone will ever move on it for obvious reasons. But the answer is really clear: just pay a base salary, flat base salary, and don't
Every,
threaten.
every
Don't
everyone in
threaten
sales,
everybody in pharmaceuticals.
in pharmaceuticals in general,
Yeah, in pharmaceuticals,
put
because
a
not.
ceiling on the money.
Yeah, but just give them a base, and don't threaten to fire them every day, right? Just because, if you have a base and you're being threatened to fire, you're still going to push. But if you have a base and if you do your job, that it's secure, because when you pay bonuses and commissions, even if you are a man of great integrity, shit gets ahead of you. It gets away from you in the heat of the moment, and you start to think, well, if I say this, it's not that bad, and I'm going to make an extra 15 grand this quarter. And by the way, my kid's going to college, and this kid wants to go to camp, and I got this bill to pay, and my car payment. Like, you start to rationalize and justify the little white lies, right? You cannot have that temptation. We are human beings. You can have that temptation in other sales, right? Because sales is sales. I get it. But in pharmaceuticals, where the end result is the user and the user is the patient, there's no place in it. There's no place for it, because it's not fair. You don't want to influence a prescriber to go to a specific medication over something different, because in the end of the day, the one who gets hurt is the patient, and they have no say in it, right? So you've got to take the bonus and the commissions out completely. Now, will that
That's
ever
such a
happen?
tough problem, yeah, because that's the whole ideology. That's the whole thing the society's built on in America: capitalism and pleasing
Yeah.
shareholders and doing better every quarter and making
Yeah.
more money. So that's like,
Quotas. Yeah.
yes. So like, how that seems like that has to come from the top and work its way down. That's the only, and
Yeah.
that the top high is the top.
I mean, you could compromise and just say, hey, listen, any Schedule II medication, so any opioids, any benzodiazepines, anything, amphetamines like, Adderall, Ritalin, anything scheduled, right? Because at least we can say, well, that's a little bit more serious. It's addictive. It has street value. It can be abused. Maybe start there and say, any Schedule IIs, we're going straight commission. I'm sorry, straight salary. No bonus, no commission. And then if you're selling like cholesterol lowering agents or antihypertensives or atypical antipsychotics or depression medication, maybe you still leave it in place. But I'm just saying, with these high risk drugs,
Yeah,
to
it
to
needs to be very
incentivize,
difficult to obtain. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
to
I think that's
incentivize people with crazy money
right.
when they're pushing Schedule II medications, it doesn't match. The other thing is, my only other suggestion is, when I first started in pharmaceuticals at Eli Lilly, the majority of their reps, and at one point they were only reps, were pharmacists. They had licenses. They had skin in the game. They had something to lose by being unethical. They had
Right.
standards. They had
Interesting.
higher standards to live up to. What happened was the pharmaceutical companies got smart and they said, wait a second, this is less of a consultative role. This is more of a sales role. We will make more money if we hire an Alec Burlakoff over a PharmD.
Right. So
And
again, it goes back to that let's make more money decision
yeah,
making system.
yeah. So maybe we revert back. We start to get some more credibility with our physicians and the actual consumers, the patients, and it holds some weight. I don't know. I'm sure there's many people that will listen to this who are in pharmaceuticals and say this guy's fucking nuts. That it's never going to happen. But you asked me a question.
In America.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, I think you can also look at other places in the world. My own personal experience here in Spain with trying to even I had a cough that was just nagging, and I just needed a very light opioid to stop my mental, my own brain from telling me to cough when I didn't need to cough. My fever
Because
was
you do
gone.
podcasts and you couldn't do your job probably,
I
right?
couldn't do my job, right? So
Yeah,
I went to the doctor, fully educated on this topic, as you can imagine. And I said, hey, I know what I'm asking for. Please prescribe me something that has codeine in it or something that
right.
can just numb this sensation that I want to cough, because I know there's no physical reason for me to cough. It's a psychological one. And numerous times I went to them and they still wouldn't prescribe it to me. So that's how difficult it is to get that here.
Wow. Wow.
So there are places in the world I think that do have an answer. I just think although they do have that answer, it's tough to bring that answer to America. It's tough to tough to tell America to do anything that anyone else is doing. Let's be perfectly honest. So to
Yeah.
solve an ideological, it's really an ideology problem. It's at its core, I think. To say base salary, someone's going to stand up communism. Absolutely not. We don't do communism. So it's like
Right.
you're battling so many different demons.
Right. Yeah. No, listen, you're right. It's not a battle that I would want to fight. I mean, if I was head of sales and I tried to roll out a new plan where it was straight salary,
You'd lose all your best salespeople immediately almost.
my top 20% would be out the door, and I'd be stuck with the bottom 80 that don't produce any sales, because sales is the 80-20 rule. 80% of your business comes from 20% of your
Right.
reps. So the top 20 would walk out the door and they'd be like, oh, well, you still have 80%. Yeah, but I have 80% of nothing is nothing.
Right,
You know
right.
what I mean? So yeah, you're right. You're right. I don't know, man. Yeah.
It's a tough topic. It's an interesting one. It's therapeutic, I guess, in some ways. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Is there a place people can find your book?
You can find my book on Amazon. It's called Selling Hard Lessons Learned. But I don't really get on podcasts to sell books. I mean, if you want my book, you can just email me at training@aburlakoff.com.
Okay, cool.
aburlakoff.com. I'll send you a free copy.
Beautiful. I'll leave that in the link below as well.
Absolutely. Sounds good. It was a pleasure.
Really enjoyed this
Thanks for having me
conversation.
on. Me too, man.
Thanks.
All right. Have a great
Thanks so
one.
much.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.